the Best Practices Workshop series. We are going to continue this series with best practice number 44, which is creating alt text in your content, and also best practice number 45, making your tables accessible. And I want to talk about, when I talk about creating alt text and making your tables accessible, I'm going to be talking about in general in different modalities, whether you're in Canvas, in Word, PowerPoint. This will kind of encompass best practices for whichever modality that you're presenting your content to your students for. And then I am Branka Manojlovic. I'm one of the instructional designers over at the Center for Teaching Excellence and Innovation. So I'm gonna skip over the housekeeping for now. And what we're going to be learning today. Today, you will be able to describe the purpose of alt text and accessible tables, write effective alt text for different types of images, design accessible tables for screen reader compatibility, and apply accessibility tools in commonly used platforms. So first off, we're going to discuss why does it matter? Why does it matter that we're providing alt text and ensuring that our tables are accessible? Providing the alt text and ensuring your tables are readable is ensuring that you're not denying your students or your audience access to information or content that is important for their learning. Most importantly, putting these two best practices in place ensures that you are ensuring that you have equity and inclusion. Alt text allows screen reader users, which are often your blind or low vision impaired students, to understand visual content like images, graphs, and charts. Accessible tables ensure students using assistive technologies can navigate data logically, just as your sighted learners are able to navigate through that data in a table. It creates improved learning for all of your learners. Creating clear, well-structured content benefits all students that need to know what the information that you're providing them within the image or the table. Alt text can also help students who are learning in noisy or low bandwidth environments to provide them access to what they need to know as far as the images go and tables. And most importantly, it is a legal and institutional compliance must. Accessibility is required by laws and policies such as the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, and also web content accessibility guidelines. Institutions are legally obligated to provide equitable access to educational materials for all students. Providing accessible tables and creating alt text is also built around universal design for learning. By building accessibility features, you're aligning with UDL principles such as multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, and multiple means of action or expression. And lastly, of course, as this workshop is titled, it is also ensuring that you are providing educational best practices in your course content. Accessible design is part of quality of course design, and it shows thoughtful, student-centered teaching that anticipates what the learner's needs are. Okay, so first we're going to focus on best practice number 44, creating your alt text. And then some of the do's and don'ts are on this slide here. Assistive technologies such as screen readers need alt text for images, graphs, or control functions and form fields so that it can provide meaning by voice to your students. In addition, alt text benefits people with intellectual and learning disabilities who may have difficulty understanding an image or a graph. And here's an example that I put in. This right here, I don't know if this is familiar to anybody. Does anybody want to take a stab at it? What this looks like, what this image is of? Okay. So this image here is
look like when you you're blind and you can't see Braille.
Yes.
That's what it looked like.
Yes. So for you and me, this will look like Braille. So for students that may have a disability, some type of learning disability, this may look like something completely different to them. It may look like a microscopic image of something that is maybe a cell or something. Or it could just, for them, they could say, well, this looks like Mars, peaks in Mars. So again, providing alt text is important for all of your learners, not just for those who are visually impaired. Some quick tips on writing alt text are that alt text describes the purpose of an image to screen readers and also provides information to those who might have a different type of just learning disability. Some important do's. Keep it concise and under 125 characters. If your alt text goes too much past 125 characters, you're probably using more words than are necessary to create an effective description or provide the necessary information to your students. So 125 is a good baseline of information, textual information for an image. Next one, focus on function. What is the image doing here? For instance, if an image or other non-text content links to something, for instance, we all like to use like little icons like email icons. You need to use alt text that describes where it's going and what it does. For example, that little icons can say, send us an email rather than an image of an envelope on there. The last do here is describe essential visual content only. Don't overly describe an image with every little detail. Provide information that is essential to what your student needs to learn about what's in the image. Some of them, some of the don'ts is don't repeat adjacent image. So for instance, if this image were to have a title, you wouldn't necessarily have to put an alt text image in it because the title gives it the necessary information.
Mhm.
And one that we commonly see is don't say image of or graph of or depiction of.
Yeah.
uh,
Oh,
yeah, don't say those essential like image of words at the beginning of your alt text. Because the fact that the non-text content may be a picture provides no meaning whatsoever. That just really doesn't. And you want to save, like, honestly, you want to save your characters, your 125 characters, by eliminating image of or graph of. Convey the image of, convey the meaning of the image or what it's about. What's the message of your image and the information that your student needs to know. And then lastly, write. So if you have a decorative image in here, instead of writing an alt text for it, don't do that. Just write it or check the little box that says decorative image. Or if there is no box, you can just say this is a decorative image. That way the student knows they can skip over it. So why is this important is because when a student has a screen reader, that screen reader is going to stop at the image and it's going to let the student know what that image is about. So if it's a decorative image, they can just skip it over instead of reading something about it, which conveys no meaning whatsoever. Okay, any questions on this before I move on alt text? Okay.
Show us an example. I've never seen, oh, thank you. I've never seen alt text, so I'm like listening to all this kind of out of context.
Yeah, it's yes. So I'll give you some examples. But the biggest component of alt text is like, again, is for your students who have assistive technologies. Because you want to be sure that if there's an image in your content that provides them something that they need to learn or need to know, you want to be sure that they're not skipping over that image if they need to know what's in the image, right? But if it's purely decorative, you don't want that, kind of waste their time for the text reader to kind of sit there and say like, well, this is a beautiful image of a beach scene with waves crashing. It's like, it's decorative, you can just say decorative. It doesn't necessarily have to. Alt text doesn't necessarily have to be on every single image that you have. But it does need to be on there if there's some information or relevance to what the student needs to know or needs to learn.
Okay.
So we're going to go into some examples. The good versus the bad. On this next one, I just popped an image here of a graph. I'm going to let you read through this, and then I want you to kind of, I'm sure that's an easy guess of which is the poorly written and which is the badly written text for this graph here. The top or the bottom? Do you want to take a stab at it? It's probably pretty easy.
You mean it's both on this?
Yeah. This is alt text written here, and this is an example of alt text written here. So there's one example is a properly written alt text, and then the other example is a poorly written alt text.
I say the first one is the written good, and the second one is poor. Yeah, and that one's poorly written.
Actually, no, it's reversed.
Just the opposite.
Yeah, it is the opposite. So why is this first one? So the first alt text reads a bar chart with blue bars about students with disabilities in different fields.
That looks like it's more than 125 words. It's not?
No.
Characters, yeah.
Yeah, characters. Yeah, no, this one is not.
Oh.
Yeah, the reason, that's why I kind of was hoping I would.
Oh, is it words? Because the bottom one is definitely more than 125 characters.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought I put in here, maybe it didn't read something on here. I thought I had put
there's like 40 in the top sentence alone.
Oh, well, we probably need to then rewrite this one. But the reason this top one is considered, I guess, more bad than the bottom one written is that the top one is just too vague and it doesn't describe the data clearly. And it also doesn't mention what's being compared or include any important values here also. So you could, now if with this chart, I would say you could probably keep it over 125 characters. It doesn't necessarily mean like it has to be 125 characters, right? It could be, I mean, that's like the general rule of thumb. But if you have a chart like this that has a lot of information, you can definitely go over the 125 characters, but just make sure that that information is important and it's not superfluous information in here. Like you don't have to sit there and describe light blue bar and the dark blue bar describes, you know what I mean? Like, try and be concise with how you're writing your alt text. So the bottom, without having to read the entire alt text at this moment, but the reason why it's effective in being a good written alt text is that it clearly describes the purpose of the chart in here. So the first sentence right here describes the purpose of it. It summarizes the key data points. And then most importantly is at the very bottom, it notes the source and any exceptions that it has. So for instance, I think, there's an exception up here in business management. It has NA. That's an important piece of information that the student needs to know. But again, most of this is summarized in concise information. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to move that quickly ahead. Are there any questions with the alt text? Does it make sense and clear why?
Will you be able to show us how to set up a presentation that includes alt text?
Sure, I can certainly do that. So when you are doing a live presentation like this, you're really not going to be able to, like I can't go in here and, show the alt text without having to go into edit form. when you do, like, let's say you create a presentation and you create the alt text, like for instance, I put this information as an alt text in this image, and then you download it as a PDF. All that alt text will then be able to be read by a screen reader. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And should we just automatically do this with every PowerPoint or presentation that we have, because we don't know our audience necessarily is gonna,
Yes.
we should
Yes.
just do it all the time?
Yes, yes. And like I said, it doesn't just necessarily reach out to your students with a disability, let's say,
Yeah.
but you might have other students again that are sight readers. They like to read something versus kind of like interpret what exactly you're trying to say. And it could be in your PowerPoint as well. You know what I mean? This is probably not good representation of how, if I were to do a presentation, let's say, for instance, on students with disabilities, I would put that text in here, but I'd be talking, right? There would be talking points on this chart as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this
on here.
isn't been an option that you select and add it, you just write out a description and that is considered to be alt text.
Yes.
I mean, okay, it's not something like you select in PowerPoint, like I'm gonna select to do alt text, you just do it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it
Mhm.
was
And I'll
some
show you-
technology,
Well, and I can show you in PowerPoint. I actually have a Word document up that for later on that we can kind of go through, and I can show you the accessibility feature.
Oh, yeah,
in
that
there.
would be
So
great.
yeah. Mhm. So now we're going to move on to best practice number 45, which is making your tables accessible. And again, here are some do's and don'ts on creating accessible tables. So essentially creating accessible tables is essential because it ensures that all students, including those who use assistive technologies like a screen reader, can understand and navigate the information in the table effectively and efficiently. Tables should convey relationships between data using clear structure. And what is this clear structure? Some of those are in the do's and don'ts. So for instance, in the do section, do use true tables. You shouldn't necessarily, if you can avoid using an image of a table or a text box, for instance, like some folks use a table cell to embed an image in there. That's also kind of bad practice because it makes the screen reader really difficult to navigate through what's in that cell. So use built-in table tools such as what you see in PowerPoint, Word, and Google Docs. Those types of tables. Again, this creating a true table versus embedding an image of a table allows the screen reader to interpret the rows and columns properly. And it avoids you also having to write alt text for that image as well. And what's important too is you need to include header rows and header columns. And these are often built into table formatting when you're using a true table format. This helps the screen reader identify how each cell relates to headers or columns. And then the next one is keep your table simple. Use a straightforward grid layout and limit to one header row and one column of headers when possible. And then the next one is use descriptive titles or captions for your table. Add a brief description or caption explaining what the table shows. And then the next one is ensure logical reading order is arranged in your table. Arrange your content in a left to right, top to bottom order. And avoid merging cells that disrupt the reading flow. Now, we're not saying don't use merged cells at all, but just kind of be very conscientious of how that merged cell is going to affect the flow of how that table is read. And the next one is check your contrast. Make sure that your text is readable with good contrast against the background. And lastly, if you really need to, I know it's hard sometimes to create a table from scratch, especially like the one I just showed you that you can grab from a statistical source. If you need to use that type of graph or chart, add the alt text to that image. And then some of the don'ts is don't use tables for layouts. Again, like I was talking in the do part, avoid using tables just to position a text or an image on a page. This confuses the screen reader and doesn't convey any real data in that table. Don't merge or split cells excessively. Now that's the key, excessively. We're not saying don't merge them or don't split them at all, but just avoid using them overly or too much in your table. Complex layouts with merged cells break logical reading order, which is why it's important for you not to use it too excessively. Don't use color alone to convey meaning. Always provide text, labels, or symbols in addition to your color. And the next one is don't leave empty cells without explanation. Either remove them or use a placeholder like NA to clarify missing data. And if you're not sure if your table is accessible, again, Word, PowerPoint, and even Canvas have built-in accessibility checkers to find if you have any issues with your tables or your with your images, sorry, in here. So here's an example. We're going to move on to our next one. Again, the good versus the bad. I'm going to say, which table do you think is the accessible table? Anybody want to take a stab at this one?
The second one.
The second one, that's the good one.
Now, can you explain why?
It has a heading and it bolds some of the important things to look at.
And it has the title.
Yes. Now for this one, you can't see it in this image here because it's in the presentation, but if you were to have it, let's say in a Word document, this one, even though it looks like there's a header, this header is, this header is actually not marked as a header row. Okay. Whereas this one is marked as a header row. Yeah, and no, it doesn't show it in here, but it's hard. I think we can kind of go through it in a Word document. And the reason is that you need to mark it as a header row, because the screen readers will read each cell in a linear sequence with no context. So for instance, if it doesn't have a header, it's just going to keep going 50, 60, 40, read across, right? It's not going to let you know that, okay, January is a header, and then we're going to move on. We're going to talk about apples, which are 50 units sold in January. Also, this one has a blank header cell, which is also going to confuse the screen reader. You also always want to have a column header in your table to identify what that column is trying to read or show the students what data. And in addition, the most important reason is that the screen readers essentially won't know what category that this information belongs to. And also this one has no caption or title. Again, this one right here has a title at least, where this one users won't know what the table is all about. There's no summary or data to explain what the information is about. And also, so if this was an image I were to embed, this one does not have an alt text in here. So this information, while it's really important for the students to know how many units were sold each month, as far as the different types of fruit, without alt text, information is not conveyed. They're not going to have a clue as to what they need to know. Again, so this one has a descriptive title in it. This first header row is marked as a header row. And also like the text contrast. So do you see this one's a better text contrast versus this header right here? If you can use like a dark font with a light shading, that provides better contrast versus the opposite, which is a light font and a darker shading in here. And what else? Yeah, so this one also does not have any empty or merged cells, whereas this one down here has empty and merged cells. And then the screen reader is going to kind of look at the cell and be like, okay, well, there's a cell in here, it's merged, so what do I do with this? Like, do I read it? There's supposed to be information in here. The student may think that there's missing information when there really isn't. Let's see. And also, lastly, this one is just plain, has a plain and logical layout. And that's easy for all users to kind of scan through this information and know what the important information is and kind of summarize it. Whereas this one where the total is not, bolded down here, kind of have to really dig for that information. Okay. Does this kind of make sense on accessible tables? Any questions on this?
No,
Nope,
that
it
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so let me go in here. I'm gonna pull out let's start with my Word document. Okay. So I just kind of threw some of the workshop information in a Word document. Again, so here we have an image. This image right here can just be
Can you make it a little bigger?
bigger. Let's see. Is that better?
Yeah.
So here, yeah, this image right here, it doesn't convey any type of information. You can always mark this as decorative, so that the screen reader can kind of skip over and just start reading workshop objectives. The key is to also is making sure that you have headers in your document. So the screen reader knows if the student wants to skip over a certain piece of information, they can just go to their header and let's say they want to read why it matters more so than what the objectives are. But anyway, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to show you the accessibility tool in here. And let's see, I always forget, here it is. So it's in review, in the review tab. There's this section right here called check accessibility. If you go down here, if you click on the arrow, it gives you some options in here. What you're really going to focus on is checking accessibility right here. So if you click on that, it's going to open up the sidebar right here. And it's going to, I got no issues on this because I have headers labeled for each of these. So this is my title. Here's a header. Here's a header. The screen reader knows how to navigate through this text. And also, those images are alt text, are labeled as descriptive. So no image is found. It tells you what the color and contrast is great. There's no missing alt text. There's all the objects, images and objects are in line, meaning that they are in line with the text right here. They're not kind of like floating off in some weird format where the screen reader kind of has to jump around in this in a weird order for the student. Tables, there's no missing table headers, and it's a good use of merged or split cells, which I don't think there's no table in here anyway, is there? Oh, this, don't be surprised it caught that one because this was one of my activities I was going to have you all do, fix this table. But that's weird that it caught that. Kind of dumbfounded on that one, to be honest. Again, there's no restricted access in this document as well. So maybe this wasn't a great example, but here, I was hoping I
picture.
So right here, if you want to create alt text, I usually just go to that accessibility and it tells me, but if you go into your, review, and let's go to alt text. So I highlighted this image and it opens up this little box sidebar here for alt text. And it gives you information, like how would you like to describe this object and its context to someone who's blind or low vision? So it tells you what the important components are, the subject, the setting, the actions or interactions, and any relevant information. Now, if this was purely, I don't know, it's not letting me put it in here. But you would be able to put your text in here. And since this is decorative, there's usually a box that says decorative image. You can just click it. Or you can write decorative image on here. And I'll kind of skip it over. And then, so let me go into Canvas real quick also and show you the accessibility checker on that one.
Being a voucher voter, I'm a part of that. And so once I saw the newsletter ad to be a part of this, I had to jump on board.
Right, fine. I have it up here.
You have some big plans? Absolutely. I'm a new mom.
Okay.
In the meantime, are there any questions or anything before?
No questions.
No, that
Find the
was really helpful. Thank you. I didn't know anything about this, so this was really helpful.
Okay, let me just pop one in here because I don't know where my screen is.
It's 12:40.
12:04. Oh, okay. Let me just show you that feature real quick. I have a course in here that I've opened, but if you're in your Canvas page and you're in edit mode, if you click edit, down at the end of the text box right here is your accessibility checker, and it flags you. It lets you know that you have an issue with this page as far as accessibility. So if you click on it, it's going to say this image right here, it highlights it for you. And it tells you that you need to change this alt text. And you can just put in here, this is purely decorative. So that's where that box is, and you can click apply. Now, if this image was relevant to what they were learning, obviously put in what the alt text is, and then click apply. And then it throws some balloons and confetti at you and says that you have no more issues detected on this page. And then you can just click save. So it's as simple as that in your Canvas pages.
Okay, I never knew that.
Oh, well, I'm glad there's something new in here that you learned a couple things. So yeah, those are the quickest and easiest way for you to check your accessibility. I wonder if there's another Word document I can pull up. Let me see in here. I don't know, let's see.
Is it the same in PowerPoint? Does that have a review and then accessibility checker as well?
Yes, it does. Same thing. Yes, same way. It'll open up a sidebar and it'll provide, so right here, I'm missing alt text on this image right here. So that was a good example where I clicked on it. Let me go back so you can see. So right here, the checkboxes mean that there's no issues. If I go over here and it's telling me that I have an image with the missing alt text, if I click on it, it's going to highlight that image and let me know which image is missing alt text. Now it will generate alt text for you. It's not very good at it. So what I would do is just ignore it. I mean, you could put in here a screenshot of a text that it's showing a conversation between or in a webinar, I guess you could say. I mean, you could start off with that. But yeah, and then once you have it in here, you can approve the automatically generated text, or you can just go ahead and write your own in here. Let's see. And then once you start typing in your own information, you can just click save. So yeah. So everything else is fine. I'm pretty good at always making sure I have proper headers in my text, in my information, in my documents. So I just overlooked that alt text one. But yeah, again, Same thing in PowerPoint. If you have time, I can pull up the PowerPoint, Jennifer, but if not, it's essentially the same feature.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Me too.
So, any questions or anything?
No.
Let me find my slides. And so that's pretty much the end of the best practices.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you can always feel free to reach out, Jennifer, if you have any questions or just need help creating alt text and tables, accessible tables. I also want to put in here, I'm going to copy this link and put it in the chat. If you go to the Level Access has this Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's a whole website on everything accessibility in here. So this is always my go-to. I hope that it's creating a proper link in here. Oh, it created a little bit too much of a link, I think. But if you go to webaim.org too, that is also a very good resource as well, as far as like making sure that all your digital content is accessible. So it gives you a lot of good information, a lot of tips, a lot of pointers. There's a lot of information on both websites. So again, if you're kind of feeling overwhelmed with it, just always feel free to reach out to any one of us and we can certainly help you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.